What is up, everybody? My name's Josh. I'm the fantasy football buff, and welcome to the channel. This is the only channel where the host has a crippling addiction to pre-workout. That being said, you can find me on Instagram at fantasy.football.buff, and today I'm going to be talking about tight ends, but more specifically the tight ends that you need to own in every single one of your leagues. These are my must-own tight ends in both redraft and dynasty formats. So without further ado, let's get it. Speaking on the tight end position going into 2020, there are a lot of tight ends in the later rounds that have high upside this year, and this hasn't always been the case. I remember a couple of years ago, and everyone was saying, you have either the top 2, top 3 guys, or your team's absolutely screwed, and that's just not the case this year. There's a group of about 10 tight ends going between round 7 and 12, and I believe every single one of these guys has top 3 upside. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying, and I cannot make this clear enough. They all have that upside, but very few of them have a very direct path to that upside, and I'm about to break all of that down. So here is the list of the tight ends that I said have that top 3 upside, but I'm going to quickly go through the guys that I'm either a little bit nervous about or a lot of specific things have to happen for them to be elite. So a great place to start is with Higbee. He is being drafted right now as the 8th tight end overall in the 7th round. Higbee was the wide receiver, or the tight end 1, in weeks 13 through 17 last year. And this came with a shift in offensive scheme. All of a sudden, we've all heard about the 12 personnel with the Rams. But when he broke out, Gerald Everett, who was the official starter, was injured during that time. And now McVay is talking about Everett coming in, and so maybe Everett will take some of Higbee's passes away. Next, we have Austin Hooper as the tight end 9, who absolutely balled out last season, but because he was seeing a crazy amount of targets, right? He's learning a new offense, on an offense that will probably be very run-heavy with the Browns and Stefanski coming in, and he has to get targets behind OBJ, Landry, and probably Kareem Hunt, and he's sharing red zone looks with all those guys and David Njoku, who's still there, who's bigger than Austin Hooper is. So he's not a player I'm particularly excited for either. Jared Cook played 14 games last season, and he scored 9 touchdowns. Now, his touchdowns are what made him valuable, but between, Emmanuel Sanders coming in and being healthy, and Kamara coming in and also who was struggling with injury last season, I do not want to make the bet that Cook will maintain that same amount of touchdown rate going into 2020. So he's a guy that it will be difficult for him to be elite going into next season. Noah Fant's another great name to bring up. He is the 11th tight end right now, being taken in the 9th round. And Noah Fant is an amazing talent on an offense that is improving, but he has an unproven quarterback, and that offense as a whole really improved in the offseason. And what I'm trying to say is he could be the 3rd or 4th person in target share on that offense because of Sutton, because of Jerry Jeudy, and because of KJ Hamler, and even Melvin Gordon, right? So his targets are incredibly unpredictable, and they're a low pass volume offense. After that, you have Mike Gesicki being taken in the 13th, as the tight end 13th in the 10th round. Now, Gesicki's a great talent, and there's rumors that he's going to play in the slot. That being said, there's a lot of question marks around this offense, and I don't really trust the quarterback situation. I don't know how Tua's going to translate if and when he comes in. And so it's just another late round tight end that could just end up being just that and nothing more than a streamer. And then you have Gronk. And guys, I am a diehard Patriots fan. I owned Gronk every single season that he was playing with the Patriots, and it paid off for me. This isn't the Gronk of old, though. He's clearly skinnier. He took a year off from football, and now he plays on an offense with so many mouths to feed. I mean, can Gronk score 12 touchdowns because of his connection with Brady and be a top 3 tight end? Absolutely. But he is sharing targets with Evans, Godwin, OJ Howard, and even Cameron Brate saw a lot of red zone targets last season. And so his volume is another one that has a very, very large question around it. TJ Hawkinson, coming in at as the tight end 15 in the 11th round. He's an unproven talent on a mediocre offense, and again, it could be between 3rd to 4th on that roster in targets. Dallas Goedert's another situation where there's a great talent, good offense, but he would need to see a major injury to Ertz or to multiple other wide receivers in this Eagles offense for him to see enough targets to be top 5, much less top 3. So as you guys can see from the names I mentioned, every single one of these players can finish top 3. They have that upside if everything goes right, and they can also all be serviceable weekly options. And do not get this twisted. Not all of these opportunities are created equal. And I have 2 specific tight ends on this list that I will be owning in every single one of my leagues going into next season. Guys, before I talk about my favorite tight ends going into next season, I have a goal that I need your guys' help with. I'm trying to reach 100 subscribers before the NFL kickoff. So if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and make sure you don't miss any of these videos that I'll be putting out throughout the offseason and all throughout the regular season. Appreciate you. One of my favorite tight ends going into 2020 and even in dynasty leagues is Hayden Hurst. Now let me tell you guys a story. Back in the NFL draft of 2018, Hayden Hurst was drafted in the 1st round as the 25th pick overall by the Baltimore Ravens. He hurt his foot in the preseason of the 2018 season and missed the first 4 games. Again, he was still a rookie. They eased him into the lineup off the injury, and by the time he was playing full-time in that offense, Lamar Jackson was the quarterback, and I don't know if you guys remember the end of the 2018 season, but Lamar Jackson barely passed the ball then. Then Hurst comes into 2019, and he has finally his first full season. And he only plays 40% of the plays, because his name isn't Mark Andrews or Hollywood Brown, he only sees 39 targets. Catches 30 of them at a great 79% catch rate, and went for just short of 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he was looking at it, he was a 1st-round talent, clearly a 1st-round pick, and his outlook in Dynasty was rather mediocre. And then on March 16th, everything changed. Reports came out from the Falcons that they were going to allow Austin Hooper to test the waters of free agency. They weren't going to necessarily assign him to an extension right away. And on March 16th at 12:39 p.m. Eastern Time, it was reported that the Browns signed Hooper to a 4-year deal. Under 2 hours later, the Atlanta Falcons trade a 2nd-round pick to get Hayden Hurst. Now, I cannot highlight this fact enough. They easily, very, very easily could have just extended Hayden Hurst, and instead they gave up a 2nd-round pick to a player they clearly feel is better than Hooper. Otherwise, they would have just signed Hooper, but they gave up a high draft pick to acquire a player that they clearly believe in more than they did with Hooper. Now let's talk about where Hayden Hurst landed after that trade. The Atlanta Falcons led the league last season in pass attempts with 684. The Atlanta defense has been a bottom 10 unit over the past 2 years. So when it comes to fantasy options, this is an offense that I want my players to be on because there are going to be a lot of opportunity to score and to catch up. Now, people may be concerned with Julio and Calvin Ridley and even Todd Gurley taking targets away from Hayden Hurst. But over the course of this past offseason, Austin Hooper, Devontae Freeman, and Mohamed Sanu all left this team, and that means there was an average of 16 targets available in this offense per game. 16 per game. That is a significant amount. Julio could see over 200 targets, and there still could be plenty for other players to thrive because they throw the ball so much. Let's not forget that last season, Austin Hooper was on pace for well over 100 targets before he got injured. Now, I believe that 80 targets is Hayden Hurst's floor, absolute floor. I don't see a scenario where he sees less than 80 targets. And it's likely that he sees over 100. So of the tight ends I spoke about in that list of 10 tight ends, I think Hayden Hurst has the highest target ceiling. right? In weeks 1 through 10, when he got injured, Austin Hooper was the best tight end in football, averaging 17 points per game. This offense made Austin Hooper a viable fantasy option for years. I mean, this offense produced Tony Gonzalez, who was an elite talent and an elite fantasy football wide receiver because of this offense. Get this. In 7 of the 12 years of Matt Ryan's career that he's been playing football, he has had a tight end on his team that has had 70-plus catches. And now Matt Ryan is coming out, and there's a report that he was practicing with Hayden Hurst, and Matt Ryan said that Hayden Hurst is one of the fastest, most athletic tight ends that he has ever played with. The man played with Tony Gonzalez, arguably one of the best tight ends of all time, and he's saying this about Hayden Hurst. Guys, keep an eye on Hurst going into next season. To summarize, there are 3 main reasons why I think Hayden Hurst could break out next season. 1, the offense he plays on, right? They're going to give him opportunities to score, and they've had a history of successful tight ends. 2, the amount of targets he's going to see. Austin Hooper averaged 7.5 targets a game last season in this Falcons offense. That's a pace for 120 targets in a full 16-game season. This is the targets that are available, right? Hayden Hurst could, in theory, see more than that. That's not what I'm projecting. I think he's more likely to see between 100 and 110. Give me that in a 7-8 round tight end every single day of the week. And third and final reason why I think Austin Hooper is going to break out is because of the team's investment in him. Hayden Hurst is not just some small, undrafted free agent that needs to prove himself to get on the field, right? The team let their tight end go. Their tight end who just saw 120 targets, and they decided as opposed to extending Hooper, to give up a second round pick to get Hurst. The Falcons believe that Hayden Hurst is more talented, and they're going to put him in the situation to succeed. Now, there's only one argument against Hayden Hurst, and that's he hasn't done it before. Right? And that argument, in my opinion, is absolute BS. If you look at his history, right? If you look at the fact that he was drafted high and then got injured, and the offense he played in and the players he played behind, I believe Hayden Hurst is going to shock some people going into the 2020 season. He is currently being drafted as the tight end 12 at the very end of the 9th round, and in my opinion, that is absolute highway robbery. I would take him as early as the 7th round. I absolutely love Hayden Hurst. I have him ranked as my tight end 5 going into next season. And I am so incredibly confident and fired up about this take. I am willing to bet 50 push-ups on this channel that Hayden Hurst will be at least a top 5 tight end going into 2020, if not higher. If he no, forget that. I'll do 100 push-ups on this channel if Hayden Hurst doesn't finish as a top 5 tight end going into 2020. I can guarantee it. That's how fired up I am about this player. Another tight end I will be targeting later in drafts is Jonnu Smith. His ADP right now is the tight end 17 in the 12th round. Now, I love Jonnu Smith because the man is a freak of nature. He is just as tall as Derrick Henry and is 1 pound heavier than him, right? Here are his workout metrics from the combine, and as you can see, he is pretty damn fast for someone his size. His physical ability translated to the NFL field last season. He was top 10 amongst tight ends in yards per reception. He was second in yards per target. He was third amongst tight ends with 2.33 fantasy points per target. And he was third best in the league, not just amongst tight ends, in the league with catch percentage. He was 4th best in the league in his yards after the catch per reception. Guys, he is an absolute beast once he has the ball in his hands, and I'm not the only one saying that. Bill Belichick himself came out saying that Jonnu Smith is probably the best in the league after the catch. He didn't say the best tight end in the league. He said the best in the league after the catch. That is high praise from the greatest coach of all time. One of the stats that I was most interested in for Jonnu Smith was the fact that he was second amongst tight ends in target separation. That is the average amount of yards of separation between Smith and a defender the moment the target arrives to him. The reason there is so much separation is this beautiful combination of his crazy physical ability and the offense he plays on. Defenses need to worry about Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown. they're going to have a very, very hard time also planning for Smith, and this is a great thing for a late round tight end. He does not play in a high volume offense, and that's why he's being drafted so late. His ability after the catch and the amount of amazing teammates around him means that Smith doesn't need 7 to 8 targets for him to be a top tight end in 2020. He has the ability, he will be efficient enough that even if he just sees between 3 to 5 targets a game, which is what I'm projecting, he will finish as a top 10 tight end in 2020. Now, I'm not saying that this outcome is likely, and this is definitely not something I'm predicting, but there is a world where the Titans defense slows down a little bit, and offenses are able to score more on the Titans and are able to slow down Derrick Henry, just like the Chiefs did back these last playoffs. Now, if that is possible, the Titans will be forced to pass the ball more. And if that is the case, we could see a Kittle-esque breakout for Smith, where you have this freak of nature athlete with a slight uptick in targets, and all of a sudden their fantasy owners are very, very happy because of their outcome. Now, Smith is currently being drafted as the tight end 17, which is an absolute steal in my opinion, considering he was the tight end 12 from week 7 on after Delanie Walker got hurt and eventually retired. I will take Jonnu Smith in the 12th round 8 days a week, no question about it. Before anyone blows up my comments and tells me that I'm just talking about these breakout tight ends that everyone else is also talking about, first of all, I like to point out, but there's probably a reason why everyone's talking about them. But two, my love for Hurst and Smith is nothing new. I joined a high-stakes, big money dynasty league back at the beginning of May, and as you can see here, I took my first tight end, Hayden Hurst, as the tight end 14 at the beginning of the 12th round. I took Jonnu Smith as my second tight end as the 20th tight end off the board at the beginning of the 18th round. So I'm not just jumping on some bandwagon, I'm putting my money where my mouth is, and I really do feel that these are the only later round tight ends I feel comfortable putting my money on and projecting good things for them going into 2020. A quick piece of dynasty advice for everybody. If you are looking for a tight end or are really determined to find a player who has a very good chance at breaking out over the next couple years, Hayden Hurst and Jonnu Smith are currently at their lowest values right now. They both are. Even with their ADPs climbing and all these YouTube videos coming out saying good things about these guys, they're still at their lowest value. At the end of the 2020 season, after Hurst sees his 100 targets and after Jonnu Smith continues to be crazy efficient and balls out on this Titans offense, it will be impossible to draft them or to trade for low. So these are two players I am still buying in every single league because I believe their value is only going up from here forward. So if you do decide to wait for tight end in your draft and before you know it, you see both Smith and Hayden Hurst off the board before you were expecting, they're here. I'm just going to throw out a couple names of guys that you can pick up that may be a little bit more than streamers going into 2020. All these guys going later than the 13th round in drafts. A quick name to throw out there, Jack Doyle. He has a history of being successful for fantasy football. Now Eric Ebron's gone, and Phillip Rivers is throwing the ball, and everyone knows that Phillip Rivers loves throwing to his tight ends, so he might have some opportunities there. Blake Jarwin is another great name to bring up, tight end for the Dallas Cowboys, who there's a lot of vacant targets right now in Dallas, and the man just got signed to a decently large extension. Then another name that you have to throw out is Chris Herndon. Another situation where the situation isn't ideal, but he is such a freak athlete, he's worth keeping a check on. So those are some names that I'm just going to throw out there if you do end up later in your drafts and you want to grab a guy that could be more than just a sleeper. So one final piece of advice for everybody when it comes to drafting a tight end this fall is when you're in your draft and you're looking for a tight end, take a step back away from ADP. Right? I'm a big advocate for reaching for a specific tight end if it fits the construction of your team. I said earlier I would draft Hayden Hurst in the 7th round. So if I'm sitting on the board, right, and I have 3 amazing running backs and 3 amazing wide receivers that I absolutely love, and I need a tight end, and yes, Hayden Hurst is projected to be drafted the next round, I'm going to take Hayden Hurst over an RB4 or a wide receiver 4, right? Because if I have to choose between Hayden Hurst, who I believe has the upside, could be a top 5 tight end, then I'm picking him because he is so much more valuable to my team than a Sony Michel, for example. Like, he would just be another flex player I would rotate in, while Hurst is someone that is going to make my starting lineup incredibly powerful. So keep that in mind. Keep in mind that ADP is just a made-up number comparing specific players, right? You have to look at the construction of your team and how a specific player will fit in to your team dynamic. All right, guys, those are my must-own tight ends. If you like this video or if I missed any tight ends, let me know in the comments below. And guys, help me reach that goal of 100 subscribers by the time the NFL season kicks off. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and go follow me on Instagram so you don't miss any of my content at fantasy.football.buff. I appreciate you all, and we'll see you next time. Peace.